Hi, this is Andy from GPS Training. In this video we're going to take a look at some of the options that are available from Garmin with regards to their handheld GPS devices and standalone devices that have their inReach two-way satellite communication technology built in. In this video we're not doing an in-depth technical review on each of the individual items we've got on display. It's really just to give you an overview over to why you might go for one type of inReach device over another device. So we're just going to start with a little explanation of what the inReach technology is. So what we have built into the units that we've got on display on the table here is Garmin's inReach technology. This allows us, with a subscription that we pay for monthly, to have the ability, if we go off the grid and we've got no mobile phone connection, no mobile data, in emergency, we can press an SOS button, which 365 days a year, 24/7, is monitored by the GEOS monitoring station. They can then see where you are and get help on its way. So all of the devices we've got here, from the little inReach Messenger standalone device, has an SOS button on the side. We've got the inReach Mini 2 that we're going to be talking about, SOS button on the side. And then the two handheld units that also have mapping with them. We've got the 66i unit that has an SOS button on the side, and also the larger Montana 700i unit, which also has an SOS button on the side. So that's one of the main reasons a customer would go for this sort of device, for potentially going off the beaten track. And if something was to happen, whether you be hiking, walking, it could be a road trip, motorbike trip, even had customers who were using it for sailing, diving, so when they come up above the water, they're using that SOS button if needed in emergency. So that's the first thing we get with this inReach satellite technology. The second thing is we can actually message friends and family to let them know we're okay. It could be a simple check-in message, which is a preset message on the unit just saying you're checking in and all's okay. Again, sent via the satellite, so it doesn't matter if you've got no mobile communication available. Also, you can type a text message as well. Some of the units use an app. With the bigger handheld units, we could potentially type that message in directly on the unit. But you're just letting friends and family know that you're okay, whether it be a simple check-in message or a longer typed message. The third thing we can do with this inReach two-way satellite communication technology is have our friends and family track us. So with all the units, you can turn a tracking function on, and then with the web address that you share, your friends and family can see your movements set at various intervals depending what you set up on the devices. So that's just a little bit of an insight into what the satellite communication two-way will do. What we really like about all these devices, if something was to happen and unfortunately you were having to use the SOS button, rather than just sending the signal out, the message out to say you need help and not getting a message back, which some other devices do, you will actually get text messages either appear directly on the screen of the unit, or when you've got it paired with an app on your phone. Doesn't matter that the phone hasn't got mobile data, but you will see those messages coming back through from whoever's coming out to get you. It could be mountain rescue if you were in the UK, so you've got that two-way communication. All of the devices, you do set up a subscription. We will put a link on the video that will just show you what these various subscription charges are, and they start from only $12.99 a month when you're on an annual plan. So we've got a choice in front of us, starting with the inReach Messenger, which is the latest device that Garmin have launched. The next device we're going to look at is the inReach Mini 2, and then we have the two handheld devices, the 66i and the Montana 700i. So we look at the reasons why we might go for one over the other. I'd normally start with the two. Now when I say standalone devices, this is the two smaller units. These two devices just have very small screens on them. The inReach Mini 2 having the slightly bigger screen, so they don't have the option for colour mapping and the route navigation experience that we'd get from a handheld unit that has colour mapping. So potentially, if you already own a GPS device that has coloured mapping, in the UK it could be the Ordnance Survey maps, you might have some other mapping if you're in another country, but it's detailed mapping, that's colour, and on the screen for navigation. So if you already own that type of device, you don't necessarily need that to buy another handheld device with the SOS two-way satellite communication built in. So that's why you might go for one of the, when we say again standalone units, we just mean standalone with regard to not having colour mapping on the screen. The other thing we look at when we're looking at the devices is battery life. With the two smaller units, with them not having the colour screens for mapping, we have much bigger battery life. So I'm going to start with the inReach Messenger 2, which is the latest unit from Garmin. So when we look at the Messenger 2, this one itself only weighs 113.9 grams. You can see in my hand here, it's not very big. The full technical specs are on our gpstraining.co.uk website underneath two-way satellite communicators, and you can look at the full spec on the unit. So with this unit, we're looking at potentially 28 days with a message or location tracking point sent every 10 minutes with a good full view of the sky, potentially with moderate tree coverage that could be reduced down to 14 days. If you set the tracking, so friends and family are tracking you, say every 30 minutes, so it doesn't have to be every 10 minutes, potentially we increase up to 46 days tracking. For someone wanting something very small, compact, lightweight, and the main function potentially going to be tracking friends and family, tracking you over multiple days. You're not needing the navigational experience that we get on a handheld device. This is a brilliant device to look at. One of the big things is for the battery life. I'm actually going to show the units in order of battery life. Now, regarding any navigational experience on this inReach Messenger, the navigational experience is pretty basic. It's not really designed for that purpose. You can't load a route on the unit to follow. You can't load waypoints onto the unit to navigate to. But what the device will do, when it's turned on, every 10 minutes it's also leaving an internal track point that you can then at any time say, I want to navigate back to a point 2 hours ago, 5 hours ago. It'll record them up to 24 hours and then it just goes on top of itself. The navigational experience is purely, you'll have on the small black and white screen at the bottom a little arrow pointer. You need to be moving for that to actually work, so you need to be at walking pace, and as you're walking, if you've set it to track back to a previous point, that arrow will be turning to point in the direction of that point that you need to walk, and also give you the distance to that point as well. The device will display a longitude and latitude grid reference, but that is it. You can't set it to display an Ordnance Survey grid reference, say if you're in Great Britain or other grid systems abroad. It's purely a single lat and long grid reference. So it's not really a device really for navigation, even though it does have that basic function of the trackback. It's for someone who wants something that's going to go for multiple days, where it can just be turned on 24/7, and potentially when we look at that, say a track point every 30 minutes, so friends and family can be tracking you, you're potentially getting up to 46 days with a full view of the sky, or 23 days with moderate coverage at 30-minute tracking. So that's just a little idea of why you might go for that Messenger device. So you've already got a handheld device with mapping and you're wanting something that's going to go for multiple days, and you don't need any backup navigational features built into the device. The next device I'm moving on to is the inReach Mini 2. You can see size-wise, it's not an awful lot difference height-wise to the Messenger. It's got the aerial sticking out the top. Slightly slimmer unit, but it does have this bigger LCD screen. Again, full specs on our gpstraining.co.uk website underneath the two-way satellite communicators within our GPS store. So when we look at this unit, this is actually the lightest out of all of the units. It comes in at 100 grams, so it's actually just about 14 grams lighter than the Messenger, mainly because it has a slightly smaller battery. So where we talked about the Messenger having a battery of 28 days with 10-minute tracking with full view of the sky, this device is 14 days with the 10-minute tracking, but we can increase that to potentially up to 30 days with 30-minute tracking with a full view of the sky, whereas we had 46 days on the Messenger with a full view of the sky. So it's still an ideal device for someone who wants that multiple days where potentially you've got nowhere to charge the device and you just want to leave it turned on so friends and family to track you. You can send messages again from the app. I should have mentioned with the inReach Messenger, you have an app on your phone that allows you to type the message in really easily. You don't actually need, again, mobile data on your phone. You're just using your phone as a Bluetooth keypad. It's the same with the inReach Mini 2. It uses the same app called the Messenger app. So even though on both units you can type messages in directly from the unit, unless you're just doing the simple check-in message, if you want to do a long message to a friend or family member, you potentially use your phone paired with the device just to send the basically type the message, and then send it via the satellites. The main thing we look at with the inReach Mini 2 that's different to the Messenger, it does have some navigational features on the unit. We always look at, if you're familiar with the device, something like the Garmin eTrex 10, which is a black and white unit that Garmin do, that allowed you to send routes to the unit to follow as a black line on the screen. So you can actually transfer what we call a GPX file, a route or a track, onto the inReach Mini 2, and then on the screen of the device it will just be a black and white screen. You don't have maps on the device, but you will see a line to follow. If we were doing the trackback function on the inReach Mini 2, rather than just being a pointer, even though you can actually display a simple pointer back to the next point back, etc., you can actually have a full breadcrumb trail. A bit like the handheld devices, it's just not going to be a colour map, it will just be a line to follow back to the start of where you started your recording from. Also in the inReach Mini 2, when we're talking about the navigational experience, it will display grid references in many different formats, so you can actually set it to display an Ordnance Survey grid reference. So again, we'd look at the inReach Mini 2 as a device for someone who, going off the grid, you wanted to go multiple days for the tracking, sending friends and family messages, or simply friends and family tracking where you are, but you maybe don't own a handheld device. You're using maps and compass mainly, but you would still like some basic navigational features as backup, where you can actually send a route to the unit or simply get the unit to display a grid reference. Now the inReach Mini 2 does actually work with Garmin's app called the Explore app, which does allow you to actually plan a route on a map online on a phone and then transfer it using Bluetooth to the device. You could just plan your routes on other softwares, third-party softwares, such as the GPS Training's free to use OS Planner on our homepage of our website, or another third-party mapping software, and then send that route using a cable connected to the device as a GPX file to the inReach Mini 2. So it does have some navigational features. So now we're going to move on to the two handheld devices. So the first one I'm going to look at is the 66i. Again, I'm doing this in order of battery life, and it just about goes in order as size as well. So the big difference when you move on to this type of device is it's got all the features of the first two with regards to the inReach side of things. So we've got the two-way satellite communication, the SOS button. You can message friends and family. If you're off the grid and you haven't got a mobile signal, you can send them simple check-in messages, or they can track where you are. Now, with it having a bigger screen and the bigger buttons to use, you can actually on this unit, I suppose, type in a message a little bit easier than the first two smaller units. But as the first two units, it actually works with the Explore app. So it doesn't work with the new Messenger app, but with the Garmin Explore app, there's a function on there on your phone where you can still use your phone as a Bluetooth keypad to type a longer message to a friend or family member, but then it is sent via the satellites. But the big difference with this unit straight away is we've got Ordnance Survey colour maps on the screen. This unit actually has the Ordnance Survey 1 to 25k maps. So we'd look at this device for someone who doesn't already own a handheld device. They're wanting a handheld device with Ordnance Survey maps on the screen, but they are walking in areas where they're off the beaten track and they go off grid, and they want that peace of mind of built into the one unit, the SOS button in case you need to summons help, the being able to message friends and family with text messages or check-in messages, and friends and family being able to track you. The one thing though, when we look at this type of device, because it's all built in, you potentially for the tracking, you're not going to leave this on over multiple days. We don't have the same battery life we have on the two smaller units due to, of course, the colour maps on the screen. So I'm just going to talk about the battery life on the 66i. We also have the 86i, which is the slightly deeper marine version of this unit, which has the built-in float on water, but the principle is the same if you were looking at the 86i. The I at the end of the reference tells us that device has the inReach technology built in. So when we look at the 66i, the weight is 241 grams, so obviously a bit heavier than the other two units because of all the extra technology built in for your navigational experience on the maps. The battery life, we're looking at potentially 35 hours at 10-minute tracking, but that will depend on other factors, on how often you have the map on the screen, various backlight settings, or you're following a route as well. So often with this type of device where it's all built in, we find customers, if they're wanting it to go multiple days on the navigation, you potentially don't leave it on 24/7 tracking, and you're using it more for the turning it on when you need to navigate over multiple days, and then if in emergency you need to use the SOS button or send friends and family a message, rather than the other two devices, the Messenger and inReach, potentially you're leaving on for just multiple days without even looking at them. You're just leaving them on for that live tracking. But of course the big thing with the 66i is, we've mentioned the colour maps. You can load routes onto the device either from the Garmin Explore app or ones you create in third-party software, but you'd follow that route on a nice detailed colour map. We can do the track back, so we can do a breadcrumb trail back to the start, displayed as an exact line of where you've walked, again on top of a detailed colour map. It'll display grid references, you can mark waypoints in the unit and then navigate back to them. So it's the full navigational experience that we're used to on a handheld device, but it also has the two-way satellite communication built in. We do get some customers who, if you were buying that unit and going off the grid for many days, but you did want it all built in rather than the separate unit, potentially you could look at carrying something like a power bank. This is the one we stock, the Goal Zero power bank with a solar panel, just so you could charge your unit up at a night time. So during the day, solar panel on your backpack, charging the Venture 35 power bank, and then in the night time you could use that power bank to charge your unit. So there's always ways you can increase that battery life if you are off grid for multiple days. So the final unit we're going to look at is the biggest one out of all the four units. This is the Montana 700i I've got on display. We also have the 750i, which has the built-in camera. So again, the Montana is the one with the I at the end of the reference, tells us it's got the inReach technology, and of course we can see the SOS button on the side. So with this device, it is the biggest one out of all of them. The weight comes in at 410 grams. The battery life is 18 hours with 10-minute tracking. That will depend again on how often you've got the screen on and if you're navigating routes as well. So very similar to the 66i, we talk about this unit for someone who wants it all built in, but potentially you're not leaving it on 24/7 with the tracking. You're turning it on when you need to use it for navigating. Again, this is when you want to go over multiple days. Obviously a day's hiking or a couple of days hiking, you're fine, but if you're going over days and days with nowhere to charge, potentially you don't have to leave the unit on all the time. It just means you're not going to get that 24/7 tracking. But with the two handheld units, the 66i and 700i, you could turn the unit on and just do check-in messages during the day, so friends and family know you're okay, and then have the unit turned back off to extend that battery life rather than the 24/7 tracking. But again, this has a lovely big screen. On this one, we've actually got the Ordnance Survey 1 to 50 map on display. We can do this unit with the 1 to 25 more detailed mapping as well. Now with this unit, because it's a big touchscreen unit, what we can do with this unit, if you wanted to send a message, you can go directly into the menu on the unit. And of course, it's a bit like the experience of using your touchscreen on your phone to type a nice long message to a family member to let them know everything's okay. It's certainly the easiest unit out of all of them if you're going to type a message directly on the unit. But again, it works with the same as the 66i. It works with the Garmin Explore app that does let you turn your mobile phone into a Bluetooth keypad to type the message that way, but then it's sent via the satellites. And the same navigational experience of the 66i, the colour maps on the screen. You can load GPX files, routes and tracks to the unit to follow as a line overlaid on the nice detailed colour map. You can mark waypoints, navigate back to waypoints, do a breadcrumb trail back to the start of where you started a walk with the exact line drawn and overlaid on top of the map, and navigate back to waypoints I've mentioned. Display your current grid reference to cross-refer with a paper map. So it's just giving you an idea of what this technology will do and why you might go for one unit over another. So just a little overview again, just to go through the 4 units with our general conclusion. You already own a handheld device with detailed Ordnance Survey maps, or whatever country you're in, you've got detailed colour maps. Potentially then you're wanting an off-the-grid device. You would look to buy something like the Messenger or the inReach Mini 2, really for that great battery life for 24/7 tracking, so friends and family to see where you are. Again, you've got the SOS function where you'll get messages back to say that help's on its way. Also being able to send the simple check-in messages or text messages. With these 2 devices, you're more than likely to use the app on your phone to type the message, just to get that. It's easier when you're doing a longer message, but you can do it directly on the unit. It's a bit like an old Nokia phone where you're moving over the letters, but the simple check-in messages are easy enough to do from both units. And just remember, again, we're looking at really at the battery life with a Messenger of 28 days with 10-minute tracking with a full view of the sky, or 14 days with 10-minute tracking with the inReach Mini 2 with a clear view of the sky. inReach Mini 2 over the Messenger, we've got a great video that we'll put a link in to this video to where that is, where we compare these 2 units together. The main reason for moving up to the inReach Mini 2, you are going to reduce your battery life, but you are getting extra navigational features where you maybe don't want a full-blown handheld device with colour maps, but you do want to be able to load a route on for backup to use with your paper maps and be able to get a grid reference. And then finally, again, going on to the 2 handheld units, this is for someone who doesn't already own a handheld unit. You're wanting something with detailed colour Ordnance Survey mapping, but you do want that inReach function built in rather than buying 2 separate units, but you're not as worried about that multiple days. Bearing in mind though, you can carry a power bank, a solar panel power bank, in case you do need to top up the unit. But it's for someone who's going off for a couple of days walking. You want that off the grid experience with the inReach built in, knowing you can charge up in an evening somewhere to keep extending that. You're not going the multiple days of 2 or 3 weeks where you're going to have no capability of charging, and you want everything built in with the 2 units, with the mapping and the SOS buttons. Of course, it is a little bit easier with the 2 handhelds to type the message directly on the unit rather than using the Bluetooth keypad from your phone, and especially with the bigger Montana, that's the easiest out of all of them to type a message directly on the unit. So I hope you found this video useful, just as a general overview on the differences between why you might go for one inReach device over another. Full specs on all the units are on our GPS store, gpstraining.co.uk, GPS store, 2-way satellite communicators. You'll see other videos linked within those products that cover the products in more detail individually. But we hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.